Hi, everybody. It's Rabbi David Mark from Temple Sholom in Pompano Beach. Only tonight I am in my home, and in true rabbinical fashion, I've got the yarmulke on. I've got the bookcase. If you're a rabbi doing a webcast, you must have a bookcase. And anyway, I just let me kill the volume on that thing. Okay, but tonight we're doing Jewish current events. In the past, I have done, shall we say, theological items, and I'll still be doing that in the future because you guys are so wonderful and I got such positive feedback. So, anyway, tonight we're going to do some of the things that are happening in the world around us, and we're really going to try to keep it light, okay? Because there's plenty of depression out there. And as a Jew and a New Yorker, I have a great deal of built-in depression, so I don't need to add to it. Okay, let's take a look. Well, here's Governor Ron DeSantis. And DeSantis is a very old word that means I will do whatever the president says. I didn't really say that. I'm not going to say anything like that. Let's see, stay at home. We are now told to stay at home, and that's what we are doing. Now, I did go out supermarket shopping today, which was an adventure. I had my rubber gloves. I did not have my face mask. I'm sorry about that. But it was an experience because I have to say, by and large, all the folks in this unnamed supermarket were observing social distance. The only people I saw having a conversation were a young guy talking to one of the local workers, the supermarket workers, about the bananas. And I really think if you're going to risk your life, you might as well do it for bananas, which are 49 cents a pound. The problem we've had, quite honestly, is that you have bananas which do ripen, and then there are bananas which are perfectly happy to remain green and hard and unsweet for their entire existence. So, at the very least, when you get out, visit the bananas, give them a wave, tell them Rabbi Mark said hi. I do like me a nice banana. I know they're no good for you, but hey, I live dangerously. Okay, anyway, we are now told to stay at home except for essential services or activities, and really our prayers go out to the EMTs and the police and the firefighters who are risking their lives in so many different ways these days. Let's see. The order takes effect at midnight Thursday. Why couldn't the order take effect at midnight Wednesday? Well, what do I know? I'm just a civilian. Okay, so let's move that along. That was somewhat depressing. Now, I know that there's been a shortage of medical supplies in this country, and that is why, for the first time in our history, no, not really. I mean, the French came to help us in the Revolution. The British came to bother us in the War of 1812. The South bought rifles from the British back in the Civil War, which is not something to be proud of. But currently we are receiving medical, not equipment. Oh, yes, there is some medical equipment. And from whom is it coming, you ask? Russia. Russia sent a military cargo plane. It's going to come today. I think it came today. Nobody called me. And there was a one-on-one phone call between Vladimir and Donald. They tweeted it out of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I tell you, we're tweeting everywhere. What can I say? That's my dog Kirby in the background here. Let's see. Russia sent us a very, very large plane load of things, medical equipment, which was very nice. That was what President Trump said. But he was apparently mistaken about the schedule. He's not expected to know the schedule of the plane. Hold on one second, will you please? Kirby, shut up. There now. Sorry. I love my dog. Don't misunderstand me. I absolutely adore my dog, but barking is something he does. Okay, next. Now, this is a sweet little story, and it's very tragic. As we all know, our hearts and minds go out to our brothers and sisters in the state of Israel. Reshit Geulatenu, the beginnings of our redemption, as we like to say, as is traditional. And this is very sad. There were two twins, well, tend to be two twins, 4-year-old twins who were orphaned because their mother, who was 49, passed away because of coronavirus. So the Israelis had a GoFundMe campaign for them, and they raised more than $555,000 in 24 hours for these children. You see, the thing about Israel, it's not like any other country. It's one big family. Even if you don't know, you don't have that many relatives, everybody becomes your relative. It's the most wonderful thing in the world. In some ways, it's strange. They get into your business, but I think you expect that with family. So this is a lovely thing. The person who organized the fund is the mayor of Lud. Do you know Lud? Lud is what the airport used to be called before they decided to name it after Ben Gurion, which was a good idea because Ben Gurion was a very important person and Lud was nobody, frankly. We are a close-knit family. We are 8 siblings with lots of cousins, all of whom grew up with Tamar. That's the mother, let her rest in peace. We're united in giving back to her children, and they will want for nothing. All right. There's been a great deal of controversy. Members of Congress, they frequently do not serve in the military, although a good many of them do. I must give credit to a good many of our senators and representatives who have served our country courageously and boldly. And now we have one of our own, Max Rose. You know him, Max Rose, right? He lived down the hall. Everybody knew Max Rose growing up. No, this is a young Max Rose. He's a freshman Democrat representing Staten Island and parts of southern Brooklyn, which is near the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. Do you know the Verrazano? Verrazano was very awe-inspiring to drive over. I remember that when I had my student pulpit in New Jersey, I would drive over the Verrazano on my way to work. Or was it the Outer Bridge Crossing? I can never tell them apart. Well, the Verrazano is much longer. Anyway, so what happens is, it's the 1970s, and I'm driving my spanking new Dodge Dart. Remember the Dodge Dart? The Dodge Dart was a Hulk. Dodge Dart goes back to when really cars were made out of metal, not fiberglass, and you knew it. You could feel it. You could drive it, and that was a heck of a thing. Had bench seats too, which is it amazes me these days with the young people with the bucket seats. Well, never mind, none of my business. Anyway, the thing was, back in those days when we lived in Brooklyn, we lived up the block from the Young Israel. And every Shabbat when we had a bar bat mitzvah out in Jersey, I would borrow one of the Sifrei Torah from the synagogue, and I would pop it into the trunk, the massive trunk of the Dodge Dart, and I would be on my way. So on Shabbat morning, not being Orthodox and living up the block, as I said, from the Young Israel, which was, and this is no, really, some of my best friends are Orthodox. The services there started at 9 o'clock. So promptly at 8:45, I would zip out the door and I would put the Torah that I had borrowed into the trunk of the car so that nobody should call after me, "You guy, where are you going with the Torah on Shabbos in your car?" So, some people might object. The other thing was, when I took it home, and I left this out, I always wrapped it in a talit, back in those days when it was called a talis, and I would lay it on the couch we had taken from my mother's apartment, and our cat, Hofstra University Mark, we called her Hoffy, would lie next to it and sort of guard it. So I thought that was sweet and adorable. Anyway, so I would drive out with the Torah in the trunk of my car on my way, and I'm the only car on the road. I mean, my goodness, it's a Saturday, it's a Shabbat, and nobody besides the rabbi is driving. And as I'm driving along, I go onto one of the several underpasses on Staten Island. And right there, do you remember the old Impala? I mean, hey, if the Dodge Dart was huge, the Impala was bigger. And they all seem to be beige. It was a good year for beige. And I drive under. I'm doing a lickety-split sort of 70 miles an hour because I'm a young man in a hurry and there's nobody else on the road. And all of a sudden, I noticed the Impala, the driver must have flipped a switch because every conceivable light from every conceivable crack in that car went on. And it's got a siren, and it's got whirling lights and blinking lights and all that business. He chases me, so of course I'm no fool. I pull over. Where are you? Oh, and I lower the window, and I see he's wearing the nameplate Schwartz. So, to Landsman, right out there in Staten Island. And he says, "Where are you going in such a hurry?" Well, the thing is, I could have gotten out of the car. I could have showed him the Torah. I could have maybe talked my way out of it. But I was so frozen and so petrified that he gave me the ticket. It wasn't a very expensive ticket in those days, but hey, I was a student rabbi. I was a graduate student. But that was the story of the Torah in the trunk. Anyway, this is Representative Max Rose, and he is shown the first member of Congress to serve in the military during the crisis. He is a captain in the New York National Guard, and he served as an active duty officer in Afghanistan 2012 to 13. And he said, there is no doubt in my mind, speaking about New York versus the virus, as the greatest city in the world, he said, we will overcome this. Like many guardsmen and women across the country, I'm leaving my day job to serve our nation. Unlike them, I will be able to return to my day job in order to vote if needed. Well, you got to salute the guy, but by saluting him, we certainly salute his brothers and sisters under arms. These are wonderful young people. I know a number of them. I've had veterans in my class for years and years, and they're a special sort of individual. That's a very, very nice thing. Okay, moving along. Well, you might say, because the Senate has a gym and the House of Representatives has a gym, does the United States Supreme Court have a gym? And I say to you, yes, they do. Higher. Okay. And the Supreme Court gym is quiet and empty these days, but then every so often, one valiant individual comes in to use the equipment. And who is this person? Come on, you know. Jewish Justice, who's not Elena Kagan? Come on, somebody? Hello? I'm looking here. All right, well, it is none other than Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She's working out at the High Court's private gym with precautions during the pandemic, and she's not there all alone. Don't be silly. You can't leave Justice Ginsburg there alone. She's got some supervision, but who is her aide? Let's see. He takes precautions, including wiping down the equipment before the 87-year-old Ginsburg works out, and they do social distancing. And I don't have to grab her, hold her, get up close and personal. She goes to the gym twice a week, which is frankly a slap to people like me because I belong to a gym. I don't go. Well, you can't go to the gym right now. I think running up and down the stairs makes a difference. All right, speaking again about elderly Jewish folk, there's George Soros. Now, I know many of you may not like him, but he is a generous person, and he is a left-winger, which is either good or bad depending on your politics. But George Soros, even though he was targeted by the government of Hungary, he's Hungarian, in what seemed an anti-Semitic campaign, has donated $1.1 million to help Budapest prepare for the coronavirus epidemic. It's rough. They've got a number of people who are sick and a few of them who have passed. Let them rest in peace. He is a Holocaust survivor. He used to have his own private university, the Central European University. They had to leave Budapest after this fellow Orban. Orban is probably the first of the virus dictators. He is quietly absconding with what remained of Hungary's democracy, their democratic institutions, and never mind. But we're very happy with Mr. Soros and his activities. Okay, now what happens if you were planning on going to a Miami Beach hotel for Pesach and the hotel says you can't come? There were 1,200 people who were planning on going to this hotel, which will be nameless. You can look it up, however. This is all from the Jewish Telegraphic Association. The Jewish Day School has sued the Miami Beach Hotel for a refund. The down payment for the vacation was $2.3 million. Now, who's responsible? I mean, it is an act of God. I don't know. I'm sure the lawyers will be banging their heads about this. And it's a Sephardic yeshiva. Where are they from? Brooklyn, of course, Brooklyn. Well, moving along here. Let's see. Okay, we did that. Now, this is the latest thing. I mean, one of the things I like to say is that here in America, people have the right to be stupid. And that is sadly the case here as well. They're called coronavirus deniers. These are people who continue to believe that this terrible, devastating disease is a hoax. Well, I know there are people who think the world is flat. They thought that when the astronauts went off into space, They weren't rotating, revolving around Earth. They were on, because the Earth is flat, they were on this sort of record platter, and they were attached to it, and they were just spinning around the outside circumference of the record platter, thinking that the world was round. Let's get one thing straight. I don't have a date for him. I'm pretty sure he's 17. No, he can't be 17th century. It was earlier than Columbus. Nicolaus Copernic, whom we know as Copernicus, he was the guy who figured out that the Earth was round. I also think Tycho Brahe. Isn't that a great name? Great name for a cat. Tycho Brahe, Tycho Brahe, Brahe. He had something to do with deciding that the world was round. And how do you prove the world is round? You see, the main ammunition that the flat earthers had or have is that when you go to the beach, raise your hand if you've gone to the beach lately. I didn't think so. Well, I've been living here, thank God, about 11, 12 years almost. And I've only been to the beach twice. And both times that was for conversions. I'm standing there wearing my rabbi clothes. I'm wearing a white short sleeve shirt and black khakis, which seem to be de rigueur for those who are going to enter the tribe, not for them, but for me. They tend to wear a bathing suit. And they said to me, "Rabbi, are you going in with us?" And I said, "No. I stand on the beach and I hold the towels and I smile." And that's really what I've been doing. So you can see, going to the beach here in Florida, even though I was a regular beachgoer when I lived, when I was younger, but that was when you could lie in the sun and nobody said, "Hey, stupid, you're covered with baby oil," or copper tone, which is baby oil with a better smell. And this is going to wreak havoc with your derma later on in years. But, you know, young people, you can't tell them anything. But there is one memory I will share with you, which many of you might have indulged in as well if you're a 60-something like me, lying on the beach for hours and hours and hours, listening to the Doors play Light My Fire. Okay? Well, if you go down to the edge of the sand and you look out at the ocean, right where the ocean meets the horizon, that's why they thought the world was flat, because they saw, come on, there's the edge of the earth. You could see it very clearly. Of course, they were wrong, and they never stayed long enough, I think, to see if a ship was going towards the land, because what part of the ship would they see first? The top, because the ship was coming around the curve of the earth. Well, these coronavirus deniers, who are really dumber than wood, they urge people to head out to their hospitals, film the entrances, and post the results on social media. And they were arguing that nothing's happening, the disease doesn't exist, because a lot of these hospitals are very, very quiet. Well, they don't seem to understand the idea of a hospital. A hospital is built with many, many doors, just like heaven. And you go in, and they take care of you. Now, just because some yutz is standing in front of the front door doesn't mean they're going to come in the front door. There's an emergency entrance around the back, there's another one on the side, and so on and so forth. So let's see. The phenomenon started when a former Fox News commentator tweeted a video of a calm-looking Brooklyn hospital center. And the next day, a New York City councilman taped that same entrance, and he showed it was a lot busier and pretty sad, very sad. So please, again, I do not deny any human being's right to do the wrong thing or be stupid. And I suggest that there are a great many people, some of them in public life, who are very good at that. But even so, do the right thing. Okay, now this is a right thing. This is a nice thing. Here's a Jewish day school in Los Angeles which donated 2,000 N95 face masks to local hospital and police. And it's not just an act of tzedakah, an act of charity. It's how on earth could you, why would a Hebrew day school have all of these masks? And the answer is because of the wildfires. Because they wanted the children to attend class even if the air was strongly polluted. But luckily it didn't happen, and that's why they are the masks, which can filter out at least 95% of particles of all sizes from the air, were discovered And one of the physicians who was there to help was almost in tears. So the school plans to donate 10 cases of toilet paper, 9 cases of paper towels, 5 cases of hand sanitizer, and 8 cases of Clorox wipes to Beit Tshuva, that's the House of Repentance, a local Jewish addiction center that has requested help. Well, I say good luck and Godspeed, folks. But if you can find those things, hey, give me a call, okay? It's quite a thing these days, and I'm glad that people have managed to stock up, or they have this one thing, but they don't have that other thing. They may have tissues, they do not have toilet paper. They may have toilet paper, they do not have tissues, and so on and so forth. But I think people are helping out, and people are hunkering down, and God willing, no matter how long the siege, I have a great deal of faith in my congregants and other folks that will be able to weather this. We Americans are tougher than we like to talk about. Okay, so in Israel, once again, where would a person go to get the coronavirus test? I know that here in America, it depends whether you can get them, you can't get them, and so on and so forth. I've spoken to some people and heard both sides. But what's happening now in Israel is that when you go to the supermarket, they will give you the coronavirus test right there. Let's see. The tests have been scheduled to start Monday in branches of 3 major supermarket chains, but were delayed after the locations of the test leaked to the public. So they called it off because they didn't want people who were, God forbid, infected going to take the tests. Here's another thing. Jewish Canadians. Now, the Canadians have all gone back. God bless them. Thank you very much for being here and helping enrich our economy. But what's happening now is a great many of Jewish Canadians streaming from Florida to outrun the coronavirus and beat the pre-Passover rush unwittingly helped stoke one of the highest virus-positive rates in Quebec province. I'm sure a lot of you folks have been to Côte Saint-Luc and know how Jewish it is. I remember that was the first place in Florida that Annbeth and I visited many years ago. I remember in particular it was more British than the rest of the country. I mean, I'm not an expert. Canada is a very big place. But one thing I remember in particular was the statue of Queen Victoria. And I thought, wow, wouldn't she be excited or not to see what's happened to the country where so many places are named after her and her consort, her husband Albert. She loved him so dearly. When he passed away, she wore black for the rest of her life. And, of course, she gave her name to the Victorian age. It's quite an era. See, years ago, when I first got interested in English literature and I was reading the Romantics, because when you're a young man, or woman, you certainly want to read the Romantics because they are romantic. Later on, you read the Victorians. And what I admire about the Victorians is that even though the British Empire was the biggest of its kind on earth, and even though they were committing acts of racism and genocide and all kinds of things, nonetheless, they did a great deal under Queen Victoria to spread what we then called civilization. I know this is a very Eurocentric white man's point of view, and we've certainly become more enlightened in this day and age, but as it's pretty much of a chestnut, but George Santayana, the British philosopher, said, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And I hope we don't repeat certain aspects of this era's history for the current time at all. Oh my goodness. Well, one of the best ways to stop feeling sorry for yourself is to feel sorry for something or someone else. And I think it's time to organize a major airlift of Thai elephants from Thailand. What's happened in Thailand is that so many people, the tourism has ended, really. And the people who keep the elephants and use them for tourism, I'm sure they're not very nice to them, or who knows, maybe they are. I don't know. I'm not an elephant expert. That these elephants, they can't afford to feed them. I mean, as you know, elephants eat thousands of pounds of hay and other elephant provender every single day. So there's a founder, the Save the Elephant Foundation. Oh, this is sad. They may end up being sold to zoos or put to work in the illegal logging industry. Here's a thought. Elephants are incredibly intelligent. What would it be if all the world's leaders, for a day, or a week, or a month, or a year, changed jobs with elephants? Maybe the elephants can do a better job than the human beings. Okay? All right, and so we move along. Well, there are charitable people who are still forging ahead in spite of the coronavirus. And here we have a gentleman from England. Where does he live? We don't know. Okay. His name is James Campbell. He just celebrated his 32nd birthday. He is a marathon runner, and so he decided to run a marathon and donate the proceeds to charity, of course. The problem is his garden is very small, but he is determined, and with that British pluck and British grit, he has overcome the setbacks. Let's see. The garden is it's just 20 feet. He's got a patch of grass, some stones, and a small patio. And he calculated he would have to traverse his yard at least 7,000 times to reach 26.2 miles. And I say, good for you, Mr. Campbell, because you're showing us how it's done. You're running around your teeny tiny yard over and over and over again, back and forth, over the paving, over the grass, over the other part, and you've collected $22,000 thus far, $22,000 running around the yard. Gotta hand it to this guy. Okay, well, okay. Now, you know, in Italy, where they've got that terrible affliction of coronavirus, and people dying and people all in quarantine, they've been entertaining themselves because Italy, of course, is the birthplace of the opera. And many Italians fancy themselves operatic singers. They've been singing out the window. And so several people in New York felt, we too are quarantined. We too are forced to be in our homes. What would it be if we stood on our fire escapes, our balconies, looked out the window, and sang some opera? So here we go. She's an actor, okay. The man is anonymous. The New York Post reports that the man sang loudly and long, and when he was done, someone off camera suggested, shut the up. That's New York. That's a New York response to something they don't like. Now, my particular madness, I did not sing out the window, but this was back in the 60s, and I was young, and I was bored a good deal of the time. I did not play outside. I did not do sports. I did not play punchball. I did not play off the wall. I did not play most anything. Instead, I had my bubble stuff, and I had my little bubble wand. We all had them in those days. Nothing fancy, not these big things that you can make, these gargantuan bubbles. No, these were plain homegrown bubbles. Now, the thing is, the way our apartment was, you had, somebody once condemned the design of the co-ops where I grew up because they had not a strange shape, but it was a boring shape. It was in and out and in and out and around the corner, in and out and so on and so forth. But we were in, okay? You had the side walls, you had our wall, you had the window of my bedroom, and underneath you had the exciting look at the parking lot. And one day, very bored indeed, I took my bubble wand, I took my bubble solution, and I dipped and I blew, and I dipped and I blew, and I was doing very well. It was a still spring day. There was no breeze whatsoever, and the bubbles are flying far and wide. The bubbles are going, the bubbles. And I was really having a good old time. Of course, I was dripping all over the windowsill, and I knew my mother wouldn't like that, but hey, this is art. And as I'm blowing my bubbles and so on, look, no, I blew out. I did not inhale. I hear an appreciative voice, stop blowing those damn bubbles! So I got so scared, I slammed the door, and that was the end of my bubble blowing career. Well, here we have Trevor Noah. He tried the same thing from a New York balcony, and he got the same response. He says, I've been inspired by Italy, and I figure, why don't we do this in New York? We're also neighbors. We can get together. You can sing along with me. So he sings that song, A Whole New World. Is that a Disney song? I'm not up on it. I don't know that particular one. And he's told, Trevor Noah, the great celebrity, and I guess he has a singing voice, is told New York style to keep it down. He says, nothing can break the human spirit except that guy. That kind of hurt. We'll try again tomorrow. Yeah, well, people don't appreciate it. The other thing I did with the open window, I used to build these magnificent plastic models. I specialized in planes. I liked World War II planes. I liked prop planes. And I did try to build a ship once. It was the Lindbergh line. Do you remember them? They were very detailed and very small and very annoying. So I don't think I ever finished that one. But the very first model I ever built was the USS Nautilus, which was the very first atomic-powered submarine. And I love that model. You know why? Because it had 3 parts. 3. It had the left side of the hull, the right side of the hull, and the periscope. That was it. So I built that, and that made me happy for a time. But it had lit a spark inside of me, and I was determined to build more models. Well, I did. I built World War II models, and I would leave them proudly standing on the shelf. They weren't the neatest things, I'll be very honest with you. Excuse me. Because I was in a hurry to get them finished. And in those days, a tube of airplane glue was only 10 cents. We would go to this pharmacy. It was called the Gilbert Pharmacy. It stood on the corner of Henry and Grand, and we'd go in there and get a 10-cent tube of airplane glue. And I would say to the man, can I buy 2 tubes, please? After all, hey, this is luxury you can afford. 10 cents, my gosh. He said, no, I can't sell you more than 1. Do you know why? Because kids were taking paper bags, remember paper bags? And they were squirting the airplane glue into the paper bag, and then they were huffing it. They were snorting it. I would never do such a thing. I mean, my gosh, my parents were always saying, take care of your head. You want to take it to college one day. I was 5 years old the first time my father said to me, you're going to college. I thought to myself, I'm 5 years old. A, I don't know what that is. And B, can I go to kindergarten first? Okay. But I got bored with my models, and I had this really big one. It was $12. Now I think you pay over $100. It was a B-17. It was a 4-engine World War II bomber with machine guns front and back and up and down and so on and so forth. I got bored with it, and I knew the airplane glue was a little flammable. It was a lot flammable. So I set it on fire and I tossed it out the window. Well, you shouldn't do that. Kids do stupid things, absolutely stupid things. Okay, now there are some young people who are doing wonderful things. They are taking nature and they're trying to save the life of a cow. Now, people love leather. I'm sorry. If there are vegan folk watching this, I apologize. But the fact is, there's something about the smell of leather. And yet we all understand you've got to be nice to the cows. And I've seen the same PETA videos as everyone else with the bullfight and all that business. And I think that's terrible. Absolutely horrific. So these 2 young entrepreneurs from Mexico, Adrian Lopez Velarde and Marte Cazares, recently lost Deserto. They take the cactus plant that is synonymous to their native country. What's the name of the cactus plant? You'll tell me. What is the cactus plant? That would be a good thing for somebody to type in the corner. This is the cactus plant. Let's see. They make vegan leather out of the cactus plant. Now, I cannot show you. It didn't print out, but they had wonderful, beautiful, of course, they were green, but I guess they can dye it other colors. But it really has the same texture as regular leather. I'm pretty sure it doesn't smell like leather. I mean, my goodness, it's a cactus plant. Let's see. They said we want to use this raw material. The plant does not need any water to grow, and there's plenty of it all through the Mexican Republic. So they hope that their creation can replace other leather goods used in furniture as well as the automotive industry. Does anybody remember the Norga? I remember the Norga. That was from the 70s. And I mean, it was Naugahyde. It was a very early form of vinyl. And I don't know what happened to it. Does anybody know what happened to the Norga? Okay. All right, let's see. Oh, okay, this will be very good for folks like you and me who love animals. We absolutely do. Our dog is a rescue, even though he figures he rescued us, which is fine. It's a mutual thing. But what's pet euthanasia rates have plummeted in big cities in recent years, falling more than 75% since 2009. Instead, people are adopting them. That's really lovely. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Now, since the 1970s, the number of stray animals entering American shelters has decreased sharply, the result of a successful push to promote spaying and neutering of pets. My daughter works in a kennel. We are so proud of her, really. And dogs and cats, obviously, they're different. We have had cats and we have had dogs. My wife says we'll never have a cat again, but you never know. And I personally, I mean, I don't prefer one over the other. They both have their advantages. But when we were first newlyweds and we happened to be going to Hofstra University, where my wife was studying, we came upon a little tiny, it wasn't quite a kitten, it was a half-grown cat, but its meow wasn't in yet. So it used to go, ah, and things like that, with a little creaky voice there. The meow wasn't perfected. And we took her home and named her Hofstra, or Hoffy for short. And she was the most wonderful cat. She was lovely. And things were going well with her. We had her spayed and so on and so forth. Now, at the time, my wife was teaching in Bedford-Stuyvesant, and that was not like now, boy. Now you can buy a beautiful brownstone for $3.2 million or something like that. And instead, I was driving her there because being a graduate student and a part-time rabbi, I had a different sort of schedule. And I came upon, when I was waiting at a red light, this little tiny, scrawny, tiger stripe cat, looked a lot like Huffy, and I snatched her and took her home, and they became friends. Now, they were totally opposite in personality. Milton was a real street cat. Milton was a toughie. Huffy was a cream puff. But we lived with them. I mean, it was wonderful for many, many years. Then when I got my pulpit in Fayetteville, North Carolina, it was time to drive down there. And we could not afford, being young and poor, could not afford cat carriers. So instead we got a couple of liquor cartons and punched lots of holes in the top and put Milton in one and Hoffy in the other and put them on the back seat of the Dodge Dart. We were on our way. My mother-in-law should rest in peace. She got us a load of corned beef because, as you know, if you're going to be on a long trip in an automobile, nothing but kosher corned beef will sustain you. There are studies proving this. And they were going, meow, 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 meow. They were so unhappy. And Annabeth just kept pushing corned beef in the top of the box. And they got quiet. They were very happy with the corned beef. And then they got quiet. And by this time, we had hit Fayetteville, North Carolina. And are they dead? So you hit the box a couple of times and they started meow, meow, meow. So thank God they were alive. Now, the motel did not allow animals. So, of course, we were not carrying animals. We were carrying boxes. And we ran into the room where it was nice and air conditioned, and we let them out, and they could see. That's the other cool thing about cats. I mean, I love dogs, but cats clean themselves. Cats are very clean creatures. And we called up one of the members of the board of directors and said, could you turn on the air conditioning in the parsonage, which was a big, beautiful building behind the shul, still is. And he was a little puzzled because we were going to be staying in the motel for a day or so because we had no furniture. The furniture had been racing us down south, and frankly, we won. So he did go and turn on the house, and then he called us and said, why do you need it on? We said, well, we have to put the cats in there. We had this enormous house occupied by 2 small cats and their food. But that's the way you travel. Everything goes around your animals. Well, later on, we accumulated Sandy. Sandy was sort of a Sheltie sheepdog, and she was sweet, but she was afraid of everything, and she never barked. She must have been very traumatized from the pound. But she got along fine with the animals. Hoffy and she were good friends, and Milton would say, come here, dog, come here. And Sandy would come over and say, yes, what do you want? And Milton would knock him on the nose. Milton, by the way, was a female. It's just that I was writing my doctoral thesis on John Milton, so get it? Big joke. And eventually, we really wanted a real dog. Sandy was not a real dog. Sandy, the doorbell would ring and she would run away. It was very odd. So we went down to the kennel by the time they knew us, and we came home with Bulvan. Now, Bulvan was enormous. Bulvan was a big yellow hound, and we did not have him for very long. Now, you know Bulvan, what Bulvan means. Bulvan is a starker, a schlub, and so on. And Bulvan and Sandy hit it right off. We let them into the backyard. We had a massive backyard. And they kind of ran. Sandy ran, and Bulvan galloped. He was a big dog. But as soon as we brought him in the house, Hoffy took one look and jumped. I never saw her do this. She jumped on top of the refrigerator. I didn't think the old girl had it in her. She did not like Bulvan at all. So Bulvan didn't last very long, sadly. Our last dog, and then I'll move on to something else. The last dog we had, because I was a little jealous, and Beth had Sandy, and I had nobody. I was in the parking lot of a supermarket one time, and this little cockapoo came up to me. She was very sweet. She was black and white, and she had big brown eyes, and totally adorable. And I don't know if she was a stray or somebody dumped her. She wasn't wearing any tags. And I took her home. And no, she was black. She was totally black. Because she was, well, it's not a slur or anything. It was a Yiddish name. We called her Schwartz. And Schwartz was a real dog. We found this out because, see, when you live behind the sanctuary, it's a dicey proposition indeed, because this was a military town. And frequently, say 2, 3 o'clock in the morning when the bars were letting out, all the soldier boys who had started to develop remorse because they got so drunk and spent all their money started to remember that somewhere way, way back in their ancestry, they had a Jewish grandmother or a Jewish great aunt or a Jewish something or other. So where can you do penance for your drunkenness, if not the rabbi's house, conveniently located behind the temple? And so there I am. They ring the doorbell. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I jump out of bed, and I go over to the front door, and I'm saying, who's there? Who's there? And the person on the other side is saying, I got to see the rabbi. I got to see the rabbi. I want to repent. And then I hear a noise, and I look down. It was Schwartz. I never had a real dog before. Schwartz had gotten territorial. I mean, she looked like a teddy bear, frankly, but she sounded pretty fierce. And I said, go away. And Schwartz would go, Rrr. And I said, come back tomorrow. And thank you, Schwartz. You were wonderful. Well, the next morning, the fellow did come back, and I received him, shall we say, in the temple itself, and we had a wonderful caretaker, Mr. Cadillac. His name was Cadillac, Kadelak. But everybody called him Mr. Cadillac because that's how it sounded, that's how it was spelled. And this fellow, this soldier who was probably nursing a terrible hangover, came to me and said, is there a chapel? I'd like to pray. And I said, of course there's a chapel. Of course you can pray, silly man. I'm the silly man. And I take him into the chapel, and Mr. Cadillac, meanwhile, is mopping the floor very assiduously. Now, normally he would mop up and down the hall, but on this particular occasion, he was only mopping in that one particular spot. And the man says, can I pray? And I said, sure. And it's a beautiful ark. It was nice, a very lovely little ark. And he drops to his knees, and he starts praying very enthusiastically and very long, listing all of his sins and abominations before God and so on and so forth. And I'm standing there feeling a little silly because really I don't have part in it. He's having his own little service, and I'm just the facilitator. Meantime, Mr. Cadillac is mopping and mopping and mopping, never moves. And the man gets up and shakes my hand, says, thank you, Rabbi. And he's out the door of the temple. I said, Mr. Cadillac, I said, thank you for supervising. I said, why did you stay in that one place? Was there serious schmutz on the floor? Rabbi, he says, when I saw that guy, I was going to stand right there. If he made a move on you, I was going to crack him in the head with this mop. So you see, always be nice to the caretakers. The caretakers are there to protect you and to take care of the temple. All right, so that's it for the one more thing. Here we go. We have a couple more. Let's see. In Moscow, in Russia, It is nominally a democracy, but in reality it's not. And there's a photograph, I don't know if you've seen it, it's making the rounds, of a young teenage girl sitting cross-legged. There's an entire line of Russian riot police with shields, batons, and helmets. And she's just a little girl. And she is holding a booklet. And the booklet is the Russian Constitution. She is sitting in front of the officers, reading out the country's constitution, which affirms the right to peaceful gatherings. You should know, nobody, it was written under Stalin, nobody has ever paid any attention to the Russian Constitution. But in so many ways, it's the most democratic document ever written in world history. I guess I'll have to take a look at it. And this young woman said, I just wanted to remind the police that we are here with peaceful purposes, without weapons, but they are not. And it's sad. Her name is Olga, of course. Olga Misik. She's 17 years old. And her father supports Mr. Putin. She was allowed to walk away after the reading, but she was later arrested by police as she walked to a subway station. They didn't introduce themselves. They didn't explain the reason. They grabbed her arms and legs and dragged her down the street and through the underpass. She screamed that they were hurting her, but they told her they knew better. And, I've got to say, with the state of the world as it is, we do thank God and for the freedoms that we enjoy in this country. It's not perfect. It was the great Winston Churchill who said, the democracy is the worst means of government in the world. But he also said, unfortunately, there's nothing better. And you can't argue with old Winston. He's a hero of mine. He really is. Well, I'm going to do something light. I mean, not everything I've been doing is that heavy, but superstitions. Who doesn't love Jewish superstitions? My folks are both college educated, let them rest in peace. They had more superstitions between them than anybody. And keeping in mind, my mother was a Galiciana, my father was a Litvak, and so that makes me a little of each. Half of me is supposed to steal horses from the other half. I never quite got that down. And I know these differences don't mean that much these days, but it's fun. It's fun stuff. After all, the Galicianers were considered ne'er-do-wells. The Galicianers were folks who didn't really appreciate study. But the Lits, the Litvaks, they were very, very serious scholars. As a matter of fact, it was the Litvaks who frequently would take a pin, a needle, and you've got the big Vilna Shas, you've got the Vilna Talmud in front of you. And the thing about the Vilna Shas is it's still the standard edition of Talmuds worldwide, and it goes back to the invention of printing, like the 17th century. And if you took this pin and you drove it through a page of the Vilna Shas, the Baki, the expert in Gemara, in Talmud, would be able to tell you each and every page, word on each page that it went through. That's a photographic memory. That's amazing. It's not just the text, it's the layout of the text. And this is going back to the days when they would take the print, the fonts, and put it into the press, literally, a wooden frame for the press, every single time. So, my mother should rest in peace, Oigevald, with the superstitions, especially during exam week. She would say, sleep with the book under your pillow. We're talking math here, big, thick textbook. And to this day, I do not do math. But I can't say sleeping with the textbook under my pillow helped me very much, because I would just wake up with a headache. The other thing she had was, you're standing in front of the doorway. You're going out into the hall. You're going out to take the bus and the subway to go up to the high school, Yeshiva High School, and take the final. She said, kiss the mezuzah with your left hand and step out of the house on your right foot. Never known to fail. Ma, it fails. I failed it. Well, I wasn't doing so great. I mean, thank God. I really never thought I was going to graduate high school. I was convinced I was going to be the oldest living high school student in the history of Yeshiva High School. But they want you to leave because they have other people waiting for your place. And in the end, when they listed, where you're standing in the class, I was in the middle of the class. And I was very impressed until I met this one was in the middle of the class. And that one was in the middle of the class. This is way before computers. So let's talk superstitions. Now, for example, Kinahara poo poo poo, we pretend spit. Why do we spit? I'm not sure. I'll have to see it here. I mean, I am sure, but I'll have to see it here. So many explanations for these things. Poo poo poo, it's pretend spitting because you're creating a quick water barrier between yourself and the Kinahara. It is well known, and I'm sure all of you know, that demons cannot deal with water. They can't cross water. The only way a witch, for example, is able to cross water is in an eggshell. Do not keep eggshells. See, I know we're Jews. We're not worried with Easter eggs, Fabergé or otherwise. The only eggs we're going to have are for Pesach, God willing. But anyway, that's why, for example, and you're probably the last generation of people I can talk to about this, because my students, they don't know. Maybe class of a dozen, maybe one or two knew about the Wizard of Oz. What does Dorothy use to destroy the Wicked Witch? I'll give you a multiple choice. A piece of wood, a bucket of water, I don't know, a corned beef sandwich. Very good. A bucket of water, because water is a cleansing agent, and that's how you get rid of demons. So let's see what else we got here. Okay, let's see. Oh, all right. Now, this is Tashlich. See, we've been having this plague for so long, it's already Rosh Hashanah. Tashlich, I love Tashlich. Oh my gosh, Tashlich, I have such good memories. See, I live near the East River Drive. The East River Drive was well known. If you went there during the year, the Starkers, the bad people, the Gazlunim, would cut your throat, take your money, and throw you in the water. Or maybe they would take your money and then cut your throat and throw you in the water. Okay, but on Tashlich, the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Okay, no, the first day of Rosh Hashanah. I'm sorry, first day of Rosh Hashanah. Unless it, well, never mind. First day of Rosh Hashanah, the first day can't. Well, never mind. All right, the first day of Rosh Hashanah, you would go to the East River Drive because we went en masse. You would go there, and no matter what time you got there, it was always in the afternoon between Musaf and Mincha, the additional service in the morning and the afternoon service. And the place was wall to wall. The actual act of Tashlich, where you've got your machzor, you've got your prayer book, and you're throwing the bread in, this takes, 5 minutes? So you got the rest of the time to go cruising for female people. Did you ever meet a girl? No. Did you ever talk to a girl? No. Did you talk about the girls? Of course. This one is this, and that one is that. You never really spoke to a girl. Okay, but what is the point? The point is, when you throw the bread into the water, it's crucial that the water has fish. And in Florida, we have fish. We got alligators, we got eels, we got pythons, we got all kinds of strange wildlife. But according to this, and this is from Kveller. Kveller is a fun part of the Jewish Telegraphic Agency. You have to throw the bread into a body of water that has fish, because fish are incapable of being affected by the evil eye. Azoy. Huh. I'll bet you didn't know that. I'll bet you thought the fish are all swimming around going, "Hey, Kinahara, watch out for that shark. Hey, Gewalt, watch out for that larger fish than I am." See? But fish don't worry. They don't care. It's sad, though, because, when you have a fish, and again, apologies to my vegan friends, when you have a fish, it is, you don't have to shecht it. You don't have to kill it with ritual slaughter. You can just bop it. Like, for example, you probably know that was a children's book. Is it still around? The Carp in the Bathtub? Yeah, so because what would happen is, and my father said, my bubby actually did this. She would go to the Essex Street Market, she would buy a live carp, and she would put it in the bathtub, and they would keep it there for a week. And carp apparently are not very discriminating. It would eat bread, it would eat lettuce, it would eat all kinds of chazarai. And afterwards, she would send it to Carp Heaven. She had an Indian club that she used. And this Indian club, I really wish I had it. I'm sorry, it seems to have vanished from the family. Who gets an Indian club in Poland? There were no Indians. They didn't have clubs. Well, maybe they had agudas. I'll never understand that. In the book, it's different. You have the two children, and they love the carp when their mother gets the carp, and the carp becomes a friend, and they give it a name. And then when it looks like mama is going to threaten the life of the carp, they take a bucket, they fill it with water, they put the carp in the bucket. He's not very happy because carp are big fish. I wouldn't know personally, but I read the book. And they bring it upstairs to Mrs. Jachenflaster, and they say, Mrs. Jachenflaster, could you guard our carp? And she says, why? They say, because it's our pet. She says, your mother's going to be looking for this fish. And they say, never mind, just watch out for him. That's the story. Oh, I don't want to ruin the book. You should read the book. It's cute. Okay, so Kinaharas. Let's talk about the Kinahara, shall we? Kinahara poo poo poo. What is the Kinahara? Well, it's the evil eye. The evil eye is not the devil. In Judaism, the devil is the prosecuting attorney in the heavenly court. Satan, the adversary, Satan. But the Kinahara, the Kinahara. See, this goes back to a pre-scientific age. If you go in the fridge and you open the milk and you give it a sniff and the milk doesn't smell right, you're not going to drink it. What made the milk sour? Well, if you keep milk long enough, it's going to get sour. So, but in ancient times, not so ancient, say 1600s, 1700s, it was a Kinahara. It was a demon that made the milk sour. I have to say, Isaac Bashevis Singer, I know he's controversial. I know so many people say he's too much with the sex and too much with the demons. But the demons are what make it fun. The demons came to this country because of Isaac Bashevis Singer. What, you think a little Palisha demon is going to get on a ship and come along? Actually, a few years ago, somebody wrote a novel about a goy with the genie. That's fun stuff. I write fancy myself. I'll have to get back into it. Okay, next, the red string, or as the aficionados call it, the red bendel. Why do we wear a left string on your left wrist? It's not really in religious text. You're not going to find this in Judaism, really. This is just one of those things that floated in. What I like to say is we Jews have been through so many civilizations. The Assyrians, the Persians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans. The Romans are still around, let them live and be well. But all these others have vanished. And where are they? They're gone. But we are taking care of their Bubba Maisalach, their grandmother's tales for them, because they might come back and they might want to know, are you taking care of our Bubba Mices? Well, we got a couple minutes left. We'll talk about the red string. Used to be, you could go anywhere. You could go to Walmart, buy some red string, and you're in business. Now, when I look, they have kiosks at the mall. Remember the mall? One day, you'll be in the mall again. The mall should live and be well. And the kiosk has all different kinds of kinaharas. It's got the blue eye. The blue eye is not Jewish. We have adopted it. The blue eye is Greek and Turkish. The red bendel, I'm not really sure, because you will find the red bendel, 3 strings it'll have. The whole idea is that it keeps away the kinahara, the evil eye. And the evil eye, it's the kind of thing, well, God forbid 1,000 times you get in your car, the husband and wife are in the car, and he turns the key, and the car doesn't start. And what's the reaction? The wife turns to the husband and says, it's your fault. That's why the car wouldn't start. And he gets out and he looks under the hood and she says, what do you see? And he says, a lot of big black shapes. See, this is what it is to be a Jew. I have met Jews who are handy. I have met Jews who can lay a tile floor in one weekend while their wife is visiting her family. But I am not one of these people. What I have, and I'm so proud of this, I have screwdrivers. For many, many years, if I went into one of those home improvement stores, I had to buy a screwdriver. Because for me, they wear out. And you know what? If, God forbid, I need a screwdriver, I still can't find it. Anyway, okay, I did the poo-poo-poo. We do poo-poo-poo after receiving good news. One of my favorites. Now, with marriage, there are a lot of kinaharas. In this instance, when you see the bride, and the brides are always beautiful, you say, Tikala is too shane. The bride is too beautiful. Why do you say that? Why? Because if the kinahara steals a little bit of her beauty, there'll be plenty left. I'm really glad to have ended on a positive note. You folks are wonderful. Thank you for staying with me, either for the whole hour or a portion thereof. And next Wednesday, God willing, we'll do it again. Also talking more, not only current events, but Bubu Maisalah. Superstitions. Okay. Take care. Hey, listen. God bless you all. All right, and maybe we'll end. I know we don't really have a little bit of time left, but I want to make a mishaberach for the cholim. I want to make a mishaberach at this time. Mishaberach avotena Avram Yitzchak v'Yakov, imotena Serf Karachav, v'yivrech v'yirapeh et kol hacholim, cholanim v'cholaniyot, v'yivarech et mishpachtam, v'yishalach trufa be'ezrat Hashem, v'nomar amen. May God, who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our mothers, Sarah, Becca, Rachel, and Leah, should bless and heal all those in need of Refu'ahShelemah, quick and speedy healing. Send blessings to their families and to the entire world, and they should find a cure for this terrible scourge very soon. We will say Amen. Thank you. God bless.